Hey, welcome back to YT Finance, and this is the channel where I went to business school so you didn't need to, and today we are talking about Palantir Technologies PLTR stock. So we're going to be discussing the latest news updates revolving around the PLTR stock, specifically why the PLTR stock is falling right now due to macroeconomic conditions such as rising inflation as well as increasing interest rates. Then we're going to move on and talk about Palantir Technologies Q1 results and how investors should really brace for impact right before these results are released, because this could either act as a catalyst that could cause the PLTR stock to surge upwards, or the PLTR stock could continue to fall down, either due to macroeconomic pressure or because of a less than impressive earnings report. So we're going to be going over their potential forecasts and projections for the revenues, EBI, TDA, and a few other financial metrics. And then lastly, we're actually going to talk about why this particular very bullish positive analyst and financial reporter believes that Palantir Technologies is a fantastic buying opportunity, and that investors should definitely buy on the recent dip that we are seeing with Palantir as well as many other growth stocks, as long as you are willing to hold the company for the long term. So we are going to go over the different metrics that we can use to actually determine if the PLTR stock is cheap, if it's oversold, or if it's not oversold, and if it's a good company to buy right now in this current market environment. So for more stock videos like this one, remember to go and smash that like button right now, comment your thoughts down below about the PLTR stock, and if you are looking forward to their approaching earnings report. And without further ado, let's jump right into today's stories. So Palantir Technologies, ticker symbol PLTR, is a big data and analytics company that serves both commercial clients as well as government enterprises. And recently, this big data specialist has fallen around 8% just in the last week, which is not good for PLTR stockholders. However, the reason why the PLTR stock is falling is because of high inflation as well as increasing interest rate hikes in the future, which has led to many pullbacks and even crashes for some stocks, including Palantir Technologies, because growth companies such as Palantir Technologies rely on their future projections and valuations. However, because the stock market is so volatile right now, and we are seeing a very broad market sell-off right now, Palantir inevitably will fall with the stock market, especially because growth stocks are the particular assets that are being hit hardest right now. So this is why the PLTR stock is falling lower and lower. So until we get inflation and rising interest rates under control, we could see more downward momentum and bearish negative pressure for not only the PLTR stock, but the overall stock market in general. The overall stock market has continued to be very volatile and unpredictable, which has caused many investors to sit on the sideline and hold large amounts of cash. However, during this time of fear, I am actually looking at the market to see what growth stocks I could buy at a cheap valuation. And although Palantir Technologies is not technically cheap if we use traditional metrics, the stock price has certainly fallen a long way over the last few months. So clearly it's trading at a substantial discount than it was trading at earlier in the year, or even the year prior, or especially in 2020. So Palantir is trading at around $10 right now, which means that literally it's almost the cheapest it has ever been. However, personally, I would buy when the company is below $9 per share, because the lower the stock price falls, the better the overall ratios and metrics for this company are, which makes it even more appealing. More bad news about the overall market, which is causing the PLTR stock price to fall as well alongside the general market, is that the US Department of Commerce reported recently on Thursday that GDP, which is the gross domestic product, had fallen around 1.4% year over year, which is very detrimental to the overall economy. And this decline in GDP is going to increase volatility and negative sentiment surrounding the overall stock market, especially growth stocks. Some analysts even believe, with the conglomeration of GDP falling by around 1.4%, the Federal Reserve increasing interest rates to offset inflation, that this could literally trigger a recession in the overall economy, all in the name of just trying to get inflation under control. So I think the Federal Reserve is doing a pretty good job trying to get inflation back under control. However, as interest interest rates rise, this is going to be extremely negative and detrimental for growth stocks in particular, as well as the overall stock market as a whole. Palantir right now has a market cap of around $22 billion, which means it's currently trading at 11 times this year's anticipated sales and 58 times their expected earnings. This is relatively expensive, and ideally we would want a PS ratio of not 11 times, but something that is below 10 times. We would want a single-digit PS ratio during a healthy market, but because the market right now is not healthy and it is declining, even a PS ratio below 10 might not prompt a buying opportunity, at least right now, especially if the PLTR stock can fall further, which would give us an even better buying opportunity. However, if you are already overexposed to the PLTR stock, there is no sense of buying more of it, because then you're going to start taking on unnecessary risk and, of course, unnecessary losses as the stock price continues to fall downwards. It would be better almost to wait until inflation and the interest rates become under control by the Federal Reserve, and then the stock market is going to bounce back. So although we could see a very volatile 2022, I believe 2023 onward is going to be very promising for growth stocks. Now, I do want to say that the PLTR stock does have a fantastic long-term growth potential for its stock price, and it also has very promising demand among other specialized data analytics specialists. However, considering the current stock market environment, which is absolutely decimating growth stocks, I think Palantir Technologies is a good buy right now, but it's clearly going to be a better buy as the stock continues to fall. Why wouldn't we want to get stocks cheaper than what they're currently trading at? The cheaper, the better. So there's no sense in overexposing yourself to the stock at current prices, especially because the Federal Reserve doesn't have inflation under control as of right yet. And this is why I think Palantir Technology holders should brace for impact, especially before their Q1 2022 earnings results, which is going to come out on May 9th. And when investors watch this earnings report, it's either going to act as a catalyst to increase the overall PLTR stock, at least in the short term, or it's going to act as a negative catalyst, pushing the PLTR stock even further downward. And the main metrics that we want to watch is going to be their overall customer count, their deal value or remaining deal value, as well as their financials divided per segment, comparing their government segment to their commercial segment. On top, we want to know if management is going to change their overall revenue outlook for the company. Clearly, we would want to keep our eyes on the first metric that we just went over, which is their customer count. We want them to continuously be expanding their overall customer base, which in turn is going to increase their overall revenue growth. And as you can see on screen, you can see that the chart clearly implies fantastic customer increases year over year and quarter over quarter. So hopefully Palantir Technologies can increase and keep that momentum. So I'm looking forward to seeing that in their upcoming earnings report. The author of this article believes that Palantir Technologies in their upcoming earnings report is going to report 260 customers in total, which is going to represent around a 74% year over year increase, which is absolutely very exciting. Now I want to talk about their deal value. So what is their deal value? Well, the deal value is basically the dollar value, this article says, of all the orders that Palantir is yet to generate revenue from. So basically, this is a backlog of work that Palantir has yet to get to. So it's basically work that they need to perform, but they are not actively performing right now, so clearly they are not getting paid. However, this work is pending, which means that this is going to be fantastic backlog work that they're going to fall back on. And right now, I think that they have a very large amount of deal value that they haven't even accessed yet. And we can see this on screen with the chart. Again, their deal value is consistently increasing quarter over quarter and year over year, to where now the author of this article believes that the remaining deal value is going to be around $4.87 billion, which again is a very positive metric. Lastly, he talks about their revenues. So clearly they have two business segments, because Palantir has their commercial segment as well as their government segment, and right now the majority of their revenues comes from their government segment, which brings in around 55% of their overall revenue, while their commercial segment brings in 45% of their overall revenue. And again, I have said this for over a year now, that their commercial clients will outpace their government segment in the future, and it will become their primary source of revenue. I have literally predicted that and said that in so many videos, and I'm telling you it's going to happen. Another reason I think this is that Palantir Technologies hasn't really released or landed any major contracts with the federal government during Q1 of 2022. This implies a somewhat government slowdown in their their revenue sources and the deals that they are landing. However, if we flip-flop and we look over to their commercial segments, they are consistently landing more and more commercial clients. The author of this article believes that their government revenue for the first quarter of 2022 is going to be around $246 million, and that their commercial segment is going to bring in around $202 million. This would imply around a 4% increase for their commercial revenues and a 2% increase for their government revenues, which would mean that for this quarter, their revenues are going to increase by around 6.1%. Now, ideally, we would actually want this to be closer to around 7%. But nonetheless, that would mean that for this quarter, their revenues are going to come in at around $445.5 million in total, which to me is extremely positive and bullish. Although the PLTR stock price has fallen around 55% in the last 6 months, this does provide an attractive buying opportunity for investors who are not already exposed to Palantir Technologies, which is why the author of this article remains bullish on Palantir Technologies. So now let's discuss what really makes an attractive valuation for Palantir Technologies and what do the current metrics say. Well, Palantir Technologies, depending on whether you think it's cheap or if it's not cheap, is very controversial because it does depend on what ratios and metrics we use to value Palantir Technologies. For instance, if we value Palantir Technologies based off of their current year projections, this is a problem because it means that Palantir is trading at an 11 PS ratio or price to sales ratio and a 58 PE ratio or a price to earnings ratio. However, you're going to see later in this article that this is actually very good because growth companies are based off of their future projections, not their current year actuals. And what I mean by this is we still have fantastic catalysts that are coming up for the PLTR stock, such as Palantir Technologies achieving profitability in the future between 2024 and 2025, and this is going to become more evident as time goes on and they scale their revenues. For instance, management still has a 30% CAGR or compounding annual growth rate from now until 2025, which means that in 2024, Palantir Technologies is going to be bringing in around $3.4 billion worth of revenue, and in 2025, it means that they're going to bring in around $4.4 billion worth of revenue. This would mean that Palantir Technologies in 2024 or 2025, if we use their projected sales, is only trading at around 5 to 7 times a PS ratio, which again is below 10, which is very good. This is very bullish for a very strong future growth company in my personal opinion. Palantir Technologies is also scaling their EPS very impressively. You can even see on screen that although Palantir is not profitable on a GAAP basis right now, they are going to be profitable on a GAAP basis in the future, hopefully starting in 2024 and 2025. You can see their EPS here on screen, and I'm not going to go through all of these various metrics, but let's just jump to 2028 where they're going to bring in around $8.5 billion worth of revenue. They're anticipating revenue growth rate of around 20%. Their EPS is $1.50 on a non-GAAP basis, and their forward PE ratio is 50, which is substantially better than the PE ratio of 58, which is what the current stock price is trading at right now. Analysts also believe that the revenue metrics, the revenue growth rate, and the earnings per share paired with the PE ratio also dictate the stock's current price. So for 2022, the PLTR stock should be worth $18. For 2023, the stock price should be $28. For 2024, the PLTR stock price should be worth $42. In 2025, $56. In 2026, $72. In 2027, $83. And lastly, in 2028, we could see a $100 PLTR stock price according to this particular author. So while the growth story for Palantir Technologies is strong, it really depends on what metrics you use to value the company. Are you basing Palantir, which is a growth company, off of their current metrics and their actuals, or are you valuing it as a future growth company because Palantir is a growth stock after all, based off of their future revenue growth and their future EPS? Be careful during this very volatile stock market environment, and with that being said, I would love for you to go and smash that like button right now, comment your thoughts down below about Palantir Technologies, subscribe if you are new, and I will see you in the next YT video.